From Virat Kohli's MCG6 against Pakistan to Bumrah's stump-destroying Yorker to Ollie Pope. Incredible things happen on the cricket ground. We also get iconic lines off it, like Jarrod saying, "I only believe in Jassie Bye." There are so many incredible moments that cricket fans just never forget. And now you can wear them on your chest. Free Hit Gear has launched a line of amazing t-shirts and hoodie designs. Passionate fans in India can order through their website, freehitgear.com, while fans abroad can use Free Hit Gear on the Etsy store to have items delivered to them. Order now with the code GOODAREAS, all one word, to get a limited time 15% discount, and you can wear a t-shirt like this one right here.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Good Areas Live podcast. I'm Behram Qazi, who you can find at DefMango on Twitter. And with me, as always, is Jarrod Kimber, who you can find literally everywhere, and currently in Boston. We've got Isam Islam and Super Devil in the comments, so hello to you guys as well. And today we'll be basically reviewing the second semi-final between New Zealand and South Africa, in which New Zealand did manage to defeat South Africa by 50 runs comprehensively in Lahore. And now they've booked a date basically with India in the Champions Trophy final, which is coming up on Sunday. How many tweets this time around have you seen, Jarrod, which have called this a joke? Because it really wasn't.
Well, I don't go on Twitter anymore, so that makes it a lot easier for me.
I saw less than before, but I mean, look, they were outplayed completely.
They were outplayed in so many different parts of the game that it really, you have to stretch your definition of the word show. I mean, they were favourites, so I think they started as slight favourites, although maybe not as, I probably would have had them as slightly more favourite than the market did, but from that moment onwards, they were never really in the game, were they? I'm trying to think if there was any period where they were on top. I don't really think there was.
I don't think there was any period in which South Africa was on top, but maybe when, Rassie and Temba had that partnership going on, close to the 20th over, they were at parity at best. I would never have them at top at any given phase, though. And, it was an interesting decision by Mitch Santner at the toss, because we know that there is dew in Lahore in the second innings, and he opted to bat. And then Temba also said that he wanted to bat, which didn't surprise me as much, because South Africa are a bat-first team. And everyone, or most people, are always skeptical of South Africa in a chase. But Santner, made the most of that decision, or New Zealand, his team did. They scored an above-par total of 362, and that was always going to take some chasing.
Oh, you think it was above par?
I do think so. I think par was probably 340, no?
No, I thought par was 380. I don't think they even got to par.
Yeah, I think they got 20 runs too many.
Look at what Miller did at the end. Now imagine that South Africa didn't lose a wicket every 3 overs in the middle. I thought New Zealand scored under. Look, 360 is it. Even when it's under par, so many things could go wrong in a chase to 360 in a game. But I thought that was an incredible wicket. I did think it changed a little bit in the second innings, but no, I didn't think that was above par at all. I thought New Zealand left runs on the table. It just didn't matter because Temba didn't make any runs for ages. I know we'll get to that.
Yeah, of course we will. But yeah, I mean, look, it was an absolute belter of a surface, right? And the batting conditions it was basically a road. Scoring a lot of runs wasn't as hard, but I suppose in a knockout game where, there's a lot of pressure, scoreboard pressure does kick in, which probably got the better of South Africa?
I'm not sure that's what happened. I think we talked about this. I thought the most important part of this game was always going to be South Africa's top order going up against New Zealand's new ball.
Yeah.
And I think South Africa believed the exact same thing. And so I think they were Temba was so focused on that he kind of forgot that you also have to score runs around it. And so he got completely stuck all the way through, really, until the 20th over. He just got, or not the 20th over, but he got stuck for a long period of time. And I think they were so jazzed up to win that section and not let Matt Henry take a bunch of wickets. Actually, New Zealand still won that section just by the fact that South Africa didn't make any runs, right? So I think that's what happened there. And once they were behind, and Temba was 3 off 18, right? And he was 56 off 71. So he was 15 runs behind run a ball pretty much the entirety of his innings.
And I mean, it was always going to be a catch-up knock, right? Because he was 3 off 18 or whatever. And then when you end up with 56 off 71, chasing 363, and he was also dropped on 50 by Kane Williamson. So you've got a life now to make the most of this catch-up knock. He didn't, and he was the captain. And yeah, they did botch it over there. No doubt about it.
So I didn't think it was a situation where the pressure got to them. I think they just were trying to win that section, and Temba just got it wrong, and then he probably got stuck as well. The other thing is that there was a bit of I don't want to say it's a fluke wicket because I think New Zealand were setting it up, but it was a road. But the one wicket that New Zealand got early on was Ryan Reckleton, who looked like he was going to make 120 off 80 balls, right? Like he looked like he was made for that wicket. And then one just stopped on him, and that can happen to anyone, but he happened to push it straight to short cover. If that doesn't happen, I wonder how differently this game would have gone, because we saw what Miller did at the end. This was a pitch you could catch up on, right? But South Africa couldn't catch up on it because they didn't have the wickets in hand or anything else. So being so slow at the start and then losing so many wickets in a batch in the middle just meant that it was impossible.
Yeah, it was interesting, right? Because when they lost Rickleton up front, I was like, okay, that's a big wicket that Matt Henry has just taken over here, because Rickleton does play quite briskly. But then there was a period where, after 18 overs, both Temba and Rassie were playing brilliantly. And I think Rassie's 69 of 66 checks out. He also got a peach from Santner. So I'm not going to blame him too much, right? I felt that at that stage, after 18 overs, they were 115? I was like, okay, guys, get to 180, 190 and 30, and then play it like a T20, because you'll have wickets in hand. And that's where they had 2 overs of, one was bowled by Bracewell and one by Santner, which went for 2 runs. And I was like, okay, now you're behind the game at the 20 over mark. So it literally was, fine margins that was dictating the scoring rate at that point. And then, Mitch Santner bowled the best spell of the day. 3 for 43, removed a well-set Temba and Rassie, and that delivery that got rid of Rassie was the best of the game. And then he also got Klaasen out cheaply on Klaasen's shot. Right? So that was game, set, match right there. And I felt like Santner was immense in this game.
Yeah, I think he was the most important player in this game. Williamson and Ravindra obviously, set it all up, and Mitchell and Phillips played. But there were runs in that wicket. Like, I kind of feel that someone would have made the runs. The ability to bowl that well on a pitch like this. And really, I think at the 30 over mark, I could be wrong, but they were like 10 runs behind where New Zealand were. With... If you had Klaasen and Miller to come, that would have been absolutely fine. Look at what Miller did. It would have been absolutely fine, especially against New Zealand's death bowling. But because Santner kept getting wickets and with, fantastic balls, it wasn't like wasn't like they were soft dismissals or anything. Like, it was really, really clever bowling. They were just so far ahead by that point. I thought it was absolutely brilliant. He's so fascinating. We did a little bit on him on the scoreboard yesterday, and he really wasn't bowling particularly well coming into the 2013 World Cup. Like, you go back, at that stage he was a test failure. He was a deep bench player quite often in Chennai, despite the fact that he's quite a handy player for Chennai. He's got 3 different skills. And,
are you talking about the 2023 ODI World Cup?
Yeah.
Yeah, you said 13. I was so confused. I was like, Santner must have been a baby.
There are all these things going on with him where, and you can have a look at the numbers. The numbers were just not good for a long period of time. And all credit to him. He has changed his career in the last year and a half, 2 years, whatever it is now. And he's a much better bowler than he used to be. But he's also a really smart cricketer.
He had a great 2023 ODI World Cup. He surprised us all because he's a defensive bowler, but he was picking up a lot of wickets. Then he floored India in, what was it, Pune? Yes, he did absolutely floor India in the Pune test. Now, in this tournament, he's been picking up wickets quite regularly. 3 for 43 in this game and also 3 for versus Pakistan. It's the pace variations and it's the accuracy, right? And the length. It's a combination of all 3 of those things. And I feel like, if you'd asked me, maybe like 6 months ago, who's the better spinner between Maharaj and Santner in limited overs, I would have gone for Maharaj, but at this point, I'm convinced that it's Santner.
Yeah, no, I think that's actually a really, really good point. I think he was, Maharaj was the better bowler for a long period of time, but there's no way you wouldn't pick Santner now. Plus, Santner can bat and field better than Maharaj, right?
And a captain, a great captain, very good field settings, smart bowling changes, all the execution. When it comes to, of course, there's a gulf in skill between New Zealand and some other teams. But when it comes to execution of plans, they almost always get it right.
I really like their plans as well. But yeah, I look, he's just become the cricketer that I suppose he always flirted with being.
Hmm.
And before, as you said, he was a defensive option.
Yeah.
And now he's so much better than that. He can take wickets, and I wonder what has changed. If it's the speeds, if he's controlling the speeds, he's also very good with what he does on the wicket. But he's so dangerous now in a way that he just wasn't.
Yeah.
I remember I remember we talked about. I can't remember who. And I was saying, I'm not sure this guy particularly good against left. Darren, so to go from that to he's not even a spinner to where we're talking about him now, and that we're only talking about 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah.
You look at you look at his sort of IPL career, and not even really, barely getting opportunities for a long time, and now I'm not saying he's suddenly get masses of games, but I feel like he's a very or he's a very
Yeah, I mean, look, his transformation has been very, very commendable, and I feel like now he's one of. I mean, if you look at spin bowlers from New Zealand, he's right up there, right? Vittori and then Santner probably, and I feel like he's kind of figured out what sort of surface requires what sort of bowling, and that has also played a role over here because Pune was different. And over here, in Lahore, it's not even like the conditions were aiding spin bowling. And yet he's bowled a spell in which he's removed the 3 biggest wickets at that point. Bavuma and Rasi were well set. And then Klaassen for 4 or 3 or however many. That's it. You've basically won the game. Or it's a fatal blow that was dealt to South Africa at that point. But anyway, we've got some super chats over here that we can take real quick. Varun, if you could bring up the first one, which is also a generous super chat by Samit Khan. He says, as a Proteas and Tottenham and Clippers fan. Wow, you've chosen the worst teams with respect to titles. Yeah, he says, where do I rank on the masochism scale? Loyal skeptic or full-blown martyr? Should I embrace that out of suffering? Emerge the most scarred fans with the strongest souls? Best free therapy. Good Areas Live. Well, I'm glad that we're helping. But yeah, dude, Tottenham Hotspur hasn't won anything that I can remember of. Maybe that Carling Cup with Robbie Keane. That's the only title I can think of. Clippers have never won the NBA.
I'm trying to work out which one's the worst because South Africa are a very good side who then don't win major things.
Yes.
Tottenham are a perennial between 4th and 6th side. Right, who are never going to probably go beyond that. And the Clippers, I don't think the Clippers have even ever made a conference final. Or if they have, it's like one conference final. Because I think when the Nuggets beat them, I think that was their best chance of making it. And then obviously they've had some good teams since then that have also not worked. So what's better? To have a team that's never even been close, so it doesn't matter. To have a team who's perennially not far away, but is never going to actually do anything, or to have a team that should do something and fails. Like, which one? If you were to pick one of those 3, Behram, what's the best one spiritually?
I'd pick South Africa because at least they have that ICC knockout trophy, right? Or the Wills International Cup. They've won that, the first Champions Trophy. And at least there's continued success, maybe not in, tournament cricket, but elsewhere. And they have, held the Test mace before the World Test Championship came into being. My question to Samit would be, you had so many London teams to pick from. You could have gone Arsenal or Chelsea, but you've gone Tottenham. And you were literally, if you were going to pick a team from LA, should have just gone with the Lakers, buddy. Why the Clippers?
I just think that this might be the best ever fuck, marry, kill of sporting teams that I've ever seen.
Yeah. It's funny, Keshav Huria is saying in the comments that Samit must be an RCB fan as well. So, yeah, I suppose you've never seen a good day, Samit, when it comes to lifting a trophy, which sucks for you, but thanks for the super chat. Anyway, we had a couple more super chats that we can just take right now. Andy is asking, did Behram grow up with Pakistan entering India games as favorites? When did he feel the dynamic shift? Which win was the sweetest and which loss was the worst? The sweetest win was obviously the 2017 Champions Trophy final. There are no two ways about that. And I suppose...
I know this is your thing, but I also thought the 2021 T20 World Cup was a big deal.
It was a big deal, but it didn't end up in a trophy. And that was a final. So for me, the win in the final is bigger. Also, I first went to watch a India-Pakistan game live in the stadium in 2004. I think that's exactly when the shift happened in a way, right? But Pakistan was still very, very competitive for the rest of that decade. It was only in the 2010s where I feel that India completely started dominating Pakistan and Pakistan wins became one-offs. Because even in the mid-2000s, even after, Waqar and Wasim, Inzi's team won an ODI series in India 4-2, and the Test series was drawn 1-1. And it was fairly competitive between both sides. I remember so many tri-series as well, in which Pakistan came out on top. So, and like in the Champions Trophies as well, they won games. I can remember 2004 and 2009. And then the Silver Jubilee game, which was the 75th anniversary or something. So I felt like the 2000s, India was a better team, but Pakistan would still give them a proper run for their money and win quite frequently as well. It's in the 2010s that this became a very, very skewed competition, Andy, if you ask me.
Yeah, I mean, India's great side kind of assembles around those 2010-ish, right? Where that's about the point where you start to get sort of Jadeja, Ashwin, Rohit, Virat, fast bowlers all together.
Yeah.
You've still got some of the older players hanging around at that time as well. Obviously Dhoni's there as well. So that's kind of where it starts to assemble. And Pakistan have had a couple of little flare-ups in that period. Misbah's side, obviously, in Test cricket was probably one. But yeah, it's been... And to be honest, 2021 and 2022 T20 World Cups, right?
Yes.
They should have won the first one. They completely bottled that game against Australia.
Yep, they should have won that tournament.
Yeah, that's what I mean. No, I'm saying the whole tournament. And then they made the final of the next tournament where they went up against where Shaheen hurt his knee. I'm not saying they would have won that game, but obviously that changes things quite a bit. So they've had two little flare-ups, whereas India has been pretty consistently good, really, for about 14, 15 years now, probably longer. A period of time over a slight change of generational cricketers as well. Some of the older players, and then that whole new crop coming through as well. So, it's very different. But Pakistan hasn't always been the complete rebel. I mean, that's what's really interesting about them is that it wasn't that long ago that they were very good at T20 cricket, and now it's like they've never seen the game played before.
Yeah, it really is that sort of shift. Look. Post 2010, I can literally count the number of victories that Pakistan has had on my fingers. There's the Asia Cup one in which Afridi hit Ashwin for 2 sixes. Okay, actually, let's go post 2012 or 2013 because Pakistan defeated India at home in those limited overs games. Remember the Junaid Khan series? So let's talk about after that period, right? It was the Asia Cup win, the Champions Trophy final win, the 2021 T20 World Cup win, and then there was another Asia Cup win in T20 as well. That's it. That's 4 victories that I can remember on the top of my head after the Junaid Khan series. So I suppose that's where it really shifted. But yeah, well, what's the next super chat, Varun? Let's move on. We've got Bharat Ramachandran. He says Miller gave up at the 40 over mark. Wouldn't have it been better to lose by 100 runs while going for the runs rather than by 50? Going for the 100 was just selfish. I mean, he was out of partners, man. I think David Miller has the worst knockout luck. He always performs for South Africa. If you think of 2015, he scores that quick fire 49 off 18, right? In this recent 2023 ODI World Cup semi-final, he scores that ton. He brings South Africa back into the game. In the T20 World Cup final, Sky holds on to a catch where 9 people out of 10 would have just let it go for 6. And now, he's left stranded for an unbeaten 100 off 67 deliveries, whereas his team has just not turned up. It's kind of like this innings on its own sums up his entire career in many ways.
Yeah. I think you're getting the He has played a part in at least one of South Africa's worst moments. But holding that against me, it's happened to so many of their players. He was just trying to get to a position where some form of, that's what David Miller was doing. He wasn't giving up. That's the wrong way of looking at what he was doing. He was just trying to keep in the other guys, and they were losing so many wickets. And what you see at the end is it's not like him selfishly going for his 100. I mean, in the last over it was, but before that, I think he probably thought to himself, "I'm still a chance of being able to get us to this, even if to the rest of us it didn't look that way." So yeah, I did read the game the way that this super chat has come in.
Yeah. So here's Varun with the stat. He says David Miller's worst period was at the 38th over mark, where he scored 7 runs, less than what was expected. At the end, he was plus 23 over expected. So yeah, I mean, look, sure, the game was toast, but at least he showed his team that, hey, had you given me some support over here or something to play with, I could have won you this game. And I mean, what was he supposed to do? He was slamming sixes, right? Like, there was nothing else that he could have done. Anyway, Lentils with a super chat now. Yeah, you were saying?
Sorry. No, I was going to say, how wickets were they down by the 30? And had they would be my question at that point, right? Like, the big issue is how many wickets they lost in that period of time, right? They just kept losing wickets again and again. And so and it's all well and good to say, oh, you need to start hitting at that point. But sometimes he was probably thinking to himself, well, I just have to stop the rot for a couple of minutes. And then, unfortunately, though, he was probably hoping that, I'm trying to think, when did and Mulder go out?
It was early, man. Johnson. I think Glenn Phillips got like 2 wickets in a row, didn't he? Or was Mulder before that?
Liam Mulder goes out in the 36th over, and Marco Janssen goes out in the 38th over. He, at that point, is thinking to himself, we can still do this. We still have multiple bodies here, and we can attack from both ends. Because they still had a lot of runs. After that, he's worried about everything, right? He's literally worried about whether they're even going to make it to the end of the innings. And then, when he gets going, there's no one left. Like, there's no one left to go from the other end. And that's what the problem is.
Yep. Anyway, Lentils with the next super chat. He says, I'm a finger mystery spinner, and whenever I try my variations, my pace goes down a lot. If I try to increase my pace, the degrees of turn go down as well. He needs tips. Well, Jarrod, aren't you a wrist spinner?
Yeah, but what he's talking about is physics. If you bowl the ball with your full hand behind it, you'll get your maximum pace. If you cut the ball, if you spin the ball, if you tweak the ball, whatever, the minute you start to put revolutions on that ball, it is going to slow it down. That is what you are doing. That's what a slower ball is, right? A slower ball is essentially a fast bowler, breaking the ball, and the revolutions and the fact that your wrist isn't fully behind it is what's cutting the pace. So you're right, Lentils. All of those things are happening, but they happen to every single human being who's ever bowled a cricket ball. If you really want to get better if you really want to be able to put maximum revolutions on a ball, without losing as much pace, you need to be biomechanically perfect. So I don't know what kind of mystery spinner you are or anything from that point of view, but you need to work out, is there a bowler that manages to get revolutions on the ball at a higher pace than you do, internationally, or it could even be someone in club cricket. Have a look at what their biomechanics are compared to your biomechanics.
Yeah, fair. All right, next super chat, because we've got quite a few, and let's go through these before we go on a break. ABCDF asks about the GOAT ODI debate. I was looking at AB de Villiers' stats in World Cup and Champions Trophy versus top 6 nations, and he's averaging just 37 with a strike rate of 94. Virat and Viv average 58 with 86 and 78 strike rates respectively. So for him, it's number 1 Viv, number 2 Virat, and number 3 AB. I mean, I think we can all come to a consensus that the best 4 are Viv, Virat, AB, and Sachin. The orders will differ for people, no?
I'm a bit interested that he doesn't have Sachin in that. I wonder why I didn't look at that. I'll be honest with you. I'm not as concerned overall with this kind of slightly smaller sample size stuff as other people are. I had a conversation actually with a guy from the PCCI podcast.
I like those guys.
He's from Boston, and we were having a drink last night, and he was talking about.
Was it Raj?
No, oh my God, I've forgotten the guy's name, and he gave me a lift. No, the guy's name who starts with an N. Why have I forgotten
Oh,
his name?
okay.
I spent all
I
night
can't
with him.
remember his name
Although I
either.
am sick as a dog, so Nishant. I knew it
Okay,
started with
yeah.
an N. And he was comparing cricket and tennis, and he was talking about, how well you do on break points in tennis compared to knockout games in cricket. And I was like, well, how many knockout games are there in cricket
And
compared to break
breakpoints are
points
in
in
every
tennis?
game.
So,
Yeah.
so in the NBA, they have stats with clutch, right? So I think it's how you do in the last 5 minutes of a game within 5 points or something like that. They have a lot of games in the NBA, and they have a lot of games that within the last 5 minutes are within 4 to 5 points, right? We don't have that many knockout games. And I remember when everyone used to say this about Chris Gale, and I looked it up, and I came to it from that perspective of oh, he must be right. If everyone says he fails in finals, it must be right. And he averaged like 50 in knockout games in T20 cricket. And so does that mean that the other people are wrong? Because he did fail in some important ones, or what is that? So with this particular stat here, I'm not sure that this means anything more than the rest of his career. It could have just been that he was in bad situations. It could have just been that he got some good deliveries. You'd have to look at how often Virat and Viv did it, and over a period of time. Let's say it's like, I don't know, what would it be for EB? Like 12 games, right? Or 15 games. I don't know how many he would have played. That's like one season of like a that's a long season of a franchise tournament. And so you don't want to over-index on stuff like that. I do think, and this is where AB probably doesn't get as much of a boost as the other guys, is, Viv Richards was really important in a World Cup winning final, right?
Yeah.
And, Sachin played some very good innings in, semi-finals and everything else. And, Virat is obviously being very important time and time again. The one thing that you would say about AB de Villiers is, because of the position that he bats and quite often the way his team has played, he hasn't
True.
been. But you
Slow
go back
starts.
to but you go back to the, like, would Virat or Sachin have been able to play the innings that AB played in the World Cup semi-final against New Zealand, right? No. So it's easier for the top order guys, I think, to have more of an impact at times in some of these games. But as you said before, I don't actually think there is a correct order of the top four. It's just, it really just depends on what you value. So in A, B, C, Ds, if he values this more, then that is a way of moving these guys around, right? Whereas, if you value just tons or just overall amount of runs or just years, then obviously Sachin goes back up to the top. If you value versatility, Viv Richards played in a red ball era and a white ball era, right? He literally, the game didn't exist and he had to learn how to play it, and then the game did exist and he had to develop with it. AB and Virat have had to deal with, multiple different changes and all these different things. And Sachin had to play for like 20. It really depends on what you like. And I don't think people really understand that when they're making these comments. And they get really angry and it's like, yeah, but your ideas are different to everyone else's. So the interesting one that's kind of off the back of this is a lot of people very upset that Dhoni and Bevan didn't make the top four. Dhoni and Bevan are obviously top 10 ODI batters of all time, and I think our numbers certainly suggested that as well. But in the case of Dhoni and Bevan, as great as they can be, they can't have the same impact that Virat Kohli has, because he's up the order, and his ability to bat up the order means that you don't always need a Dhoni or a Bevan, right? And so, and you can throw Lance Klusener in there as well, like, there's David Miller as well. So again, that depends on, well, you could say, well, yeah, but no one's ever been close to Dhoni or Bevan before. So surely, compared to all number 5, 6, 7s or whatever positions they were batting, they're so much better than everyone else. And Kohli isn't that much better than maybe number 3s, but he's still having more impact on the game because of the way he does it. So I think it's a very fascinating one. Anyway, there is no right answer. That's the important thing.
You have spent 5 minutes on the super chat, so I think it's time for us to move on. Before this podcast, Jarrod was like, I don't think I can talk a lot today, mate. My voice is failing me, and here we are. Anyway, Walking Alive asks, is this competition rigged in favor of India, as people are saying, or just rigged to squeeze as much money from Indian players as possible?
Ooh,
Look, the game is commercial, and there is precedent for this. We literally did an entire foot marks on the Champions Trophy, and you can see how they've always kind of rigged things in order to make more money off of ICC tournaments. So put that thing on one side, right? As far as India is concerned, look, they are the most powerful board, the BCCI, and they get what they want more often than not. They didn't want to come to Pakistan. We always knew they won't come to Pakistan, and they got their way over here as well. So, yes, sure, they do benefit from playing at the same venue because they get to know more about the conditions with every game, and they can pick their squad accordingly, and they don't have to travel to different places, and there is no commute. They're staying in the same hotel. But then this is also a quality Indian team who would have been favorites in most conditions. So make what you want out of that.
I think, yeah, I mean, they've made the last 2 finals. So the last 3 ICC finals, they didn't always need advantages to be able to do that, right? But what I would say is this. I think he's onto something when he's saying it is rigged to squeeze as much money from the Indian players. I've said this for ages. The Indian players are the most underpaid players in the world, right? Their board does not give them the money that they deserve to be paid. The IPL teams do not pay them the money that they deserve to be paid. Even the overseas IPL players deserve to be paid a lot more money. And so we've seen this with England as well, where a cricket board just decides to make as much money as they can from this without really, I would say, correctly compensating that. But yes, everything you said was right. It is an advantage, and we might even do a video on it. I might have a deeper look at it. It is an advantage, but I think walking live is, and this is the way that I've been looking at it for a few teams of recent times, is the team is being exploited, but also getting an advantage at the same time, right?
Yeah.
It's an advantage to them. Essentially, if this was different teams, India just wouldn't have come and the tournament would have all been in Pakistan. The tournament only exists so that India and Pakistan can play each other.
Yeah. And then Varun also has something to say. He says, I believe the final is the team that traveled the most versus the team that traveled the least. I don't know, man. South Africa traveled a lot. They went to Dubai and then came back to Pakistan without playing.
Yeah.
And David Miller was quite upset about that as well. And my question to you is, could that excessive travel and the fatigue that causes, could that have been a potential reason behind South Africa's defeat? Because David Miller seemed to suggest that it did, but honestly, they're professional players, and New Zealand also traveled at a very odd hour at night.
I was about to say,
Pakistan.
If New Zealand hadn't done the same thing, I would probably suggest that if New Zealand had been there for a week, look, I've worked with teams. It is so hard when you are traveling all the time. I think when I was with the CPL, we had a game in Trinidad. 2 days later, we had a game in Guyana, and then we had a game in Jamaica, and then we had a game in St. Lucia, like without almost any breaks in between. So we would finish games at 11 o'clock. No, actually, it was later than that. Some of the games finished at midnight and after midnight. We would fly at 4 a.m., right? And then be playing either the next day or the day after. How does a professional athlete have, get the most out of themselves in that situation, right? And
True.
It's getting to the airport, it's packing, it's unpacking, it's understanding where to, I know this sounds weird, but where to plug your stuff in, where do I plug my phone in, right?
Also, not being able to stretch your feet entirely the way you want to, right? I always struggle with that.
Being compressed on the plane, being compressed on the bus, like, all those sorts of things play a part. So India's had a massive advantage from that point of view. But my memory of the 2023 World Cup, and I'll have to go back and have a look at that, is that in the 2023 World Cup, they were like traveling like crazy in that tournament because, again, and this goes back to Walking Alive's point here, BCCI wanted to make as much political hay as they could from making sure that the team played everywhere, right?
Yep.
And so the team is
they were still playing at home in all of those venues. So
yes, but again, no, I'm not saying they didn't have advantage of playing at home, but you're not playing at home if you're in a hotel and you're traveling, and you're in a hotel and you're traveling. Like we've seen Australia do that before as well. Some of these World Cups, have a look. Some team will play they'll play 2 games in one venue, so they'll be there for a week. Then they'll play 2 games in another venue, and they'll be there for a week. Quite often, there's other teams who are just going around, and it comes back to the fact that cricket has never scheduled tournaments correctly because they don't schedule them in what is best for the tournament or what is best for the competition. They schedule them based on arbitrary things like, we have to make sure that Australia play England in a place where tourists can go to, and we have to have India play Pakistan.
They could have sorted this out quite easily, and this probably falls on the PCB and the ICC because the PCB gave the schedule and the ICC approved it. Should have had India's game versus New Zealand in their final group game on a Saturday and the semi-finals on Wednesday and Thursday. And I don't see this issue happening then. Like, it all comes down to that level of stupidity or incompetence.
Or if you really wanted, if this was a proper sport, could we not have just, I think people have mentioned this before, had a game in Sri Lanka? So that India actually had to travel. Like there are ways of actually making it more fair. I think there was no way that was ever going to happen, and it's a bit tongue in cheek suggesting it. But the point is, we're not a real sport, and so we make all of these ridiculous rules, and then But the people who are really argue, if you want to know why we aren't mentioning it all the time, I know we're mentioning it right now. It's because me and Behram have been talking about this for a year.
Exactly. And people are coming and, swearing at me on Twitter and calling me a sellout. Bro, I was singing this exact song for a goddamn year on 2 different podcasts and Talk Sport. I went international with this literal, argument. So I don't know. I don't care at this point. But anyway, that's it for this super chat. And Sal Goodman is saying, is Sunday basically India versus rest of the world perpetual cribbers. Even if you take the cribbing element out of it, everyone always supports the underdog. That's just how human beings are kind of wired. It's always David versus Goliath. So I don't think a lot of neutrals will be supporting India, mate.
No, I'd be very surprised if India got a lot of support here. There's maybe a couple of people that are looking at legacy for India at this point. Like as in, I remember when Australia got really good, there was random fans from around the world that were like, if Australia just keeps winning, because then you live in, and the same thing happened with the West Indies. Like people started supporting the West Indies because they were like, this is the great team. So there's maybe a couple of people there that will feel that way. But I would assume that the vast majority of the world will support. Indians have to get used to it. I was an Australian, and every time I went anywhere internationally, people would moan about the Australian cricket team. If you're good, people are going to moan. Everyone moans about the Lakers, right? Everyone moans about Manchester United. Not as much now, but traditionally.
Well,
right? Like that.
I mean, now everyone takes the piss out of Manchester United, and I love it. I'm one of those people.
and that's what happens, right? When you get shit, it goes completely the other way as well. So you never really shake it. But India's going to be good for a very long time. Opposition fans are not going to want them to win for a very long time.
Yeah. Anyway, answer this quickly, Jarrod. Reddit RCB channel is asking what exactly is a Zulu number, and then we're going to take a break.
Yeah, so we do Zulu numbers and we do bird numbers. So Zulu is the batting number. Essentially, what we're trying to do is normalize the numbers so that you can talk about players across eras. So rather than going, Jeff Marsh had a strike rate of 67 or 57 or 52 or whatever his strike rate was, and going, oh, he was terrible. But actually, the strike rate in his era might have been 70, so he's not that far off the overall mark, but he's still at the back in Jeff Marsh's case. So we're normalizing it for average and for strike rate, and we're doing exactly the same thing for strike rate and economy with bowling. So it just gives us a chance to be able to talk about Viv Richards versus Sachin without having to go, oh, he averaged this, but if he played in this era, well, we don't have to do that now. We can normalize it so we can see what his numbers would look like now.
Bam. All right. On that note, let's take a short break. You're watching Good Areas Live with Jarrod and Behram, and go nowhere because we still have a lot to talk about New Zealand.
Cricket media used to be pretty simple. Find your favourite newspaper, head to Cricinfo, and maybe a blog you like. Now just finding the best stories and writing is a huge challenge. You already have a job. You just want to read about cricket. Well, that is what the best of cricket is currently doing. They go out daily to find the newest cricket coverage and the best stories from any publication in the world. And when they can't discover what they want, they also hire some of the best writers to produce their own great stories. You can get the best of cricket via their website or on WhatsApp. They find cricket's best stories and give them to you every day.
Welcome back to Good Areas Live. You guys are with Behram and Jarrod, and we'll come back to the Super Chats in a bit. Let's talk about some of New Zealand's batters. Now, player of the match, Rachin Ravindra, scored his second ton of this Champions Trophy, 108 of 101 deliveries. Also, sneaked out the wicket of Aiden Markram. Ended up with 1 for 20 in 5 overs, which is quite impressive, actually. And, I mean, he's also set a new record, Jarrod. He is the fastest to 5 ODI tons in 13 innings in ICC 50 over events. So no one else has gotten 5 in 13. And I mean, like, what a knock. I love the way he countered both pace and spin, those pull shots, wristy flicks, the punches through covers and down the ground, and the way he kind of uses his feet versus spin and also nails it through the covers at times. I mean, he has impeccable range. And I mean, he is so imperative to New Zealand's cause because he was always ahead of the game. Like, he was going it better than run a ball. And I think that that's really, really crucial for New Zealand if they are to do well in this final.
Yeah, I mean, what was Kane Williamson's strike rate off the first 40 balls he faced? Like, he got
I mean, I
stuck.
remember, I think Kane got his 50 in like 62, 63, or maybe 64 deliveries. He ended up with 102 in 94, but
Yeah,
for
he
the
really
longest
caught
time,
up.
he wasn't at run a ball. Yeah.
And so the only way to do that, right, is to have someone else going nuts. And, you know, if you compare that to Rassi, and I'm not having a go at Rassi because Rassi's not the same kind of player as
And Rasi did quite well, I think. He was going it better than run a ball, right?
yeah. But what I mean is, you kind of that's the difference, right? When it comes down to it, like, you need to be able to overcome the person at the other end and allow them to play the way that you need them to. I just, you know, and have felt this way for a long time. He's just so impressive. His ability to play short pitch bowling, you know, he's good enough against the moving ball. I wouldn't say that's his best skill. He can handle faster bowling. He can hit the ball in multiple different parts of the ground. You know, he's a very good player of spin. He's kind of slightly loose still. And
I
maybe
mean, there
that's
was
just
that
modern
one
cricket.
ball, that one Maharaj ball in which he edged it, but there was no slipper, right? So that went for
Oh yeah,
four.
but I just mean, like, if you look at him and you look at Harry Brook and Jaiswal, all three of them are just a little bit loose. And I don't know if that's just because they're young and they're coming through, and maybe you get to 26, 27 and you know, sand off some of the edges. And I remember Michael Clark being another player I felt exactly the same about. But he just had so many different weapons. It's just a ridiculous player when you think about it.
Yeah, no. And I think he paces his innings to perfection. And we all speak about how some of New Zealand's batters can be quite one-dimensional in Kane Williamson, Tom Latham, at times Daryl Mitchell. So Rachin kind of does, you know, throw the kitchen sink at it at times. Like, we've seen that in Chennai as well, and the ODI World Cup, where he really like goes for those brisk starts, which is why I feel like he'll be really important versus India. But look, you've got to doff your hat to Kane as well. Sure, it was a catch-up knock, but he caught up. 102 of 94, and we all know that he's great versus spin, and he also, you know, managed well against pace in this innings. But look at the intent shots. A reverse sweep out of nowhere, like 2 or 3 scoops. He even got dismissed on a scoop, right? So that was basically what his team required of him. And he understood the assignment, and he fulfilled the demand. Can he do it one more time versus India? That's the $1 million question, I suppose.
Yeah, and so he was 40 off 57 on this wicket.
Yeah.
Right? So he was basically
He
playing
shouldn't have been.
Yeah, so he's basically playing Timber's innings.
Yes.
But this is the thing that frustrates me about Williamson, is a couple of years ago, he could do this quite regularly. And I think some of it must just be his elbow, if we're being honest. I just don't think he quite has the power that he once had. But he used to be able to do this quite regularly, and he hasn't. He's become, I mean, you called him one-dimensional. I remember looking at his T20 stats, 2017, 2018, and he had, I think he had, in the death, he would score at like 2 runs a ball quite regularly, right?
Okay.
Now, it was probably more 180 strike rate rather than quite at 2 runs a ball, but he had a ceiling that was really, really high, and that has almost disappeared from his game. And I would like to think that it's the elbow. This innings is a perfect situation of, the first time he tries to catch up and he goes out, we're all sitting there going, he might have cost his team the entire game, right?
I mean, think about it, right? Jarrod, he was dropped by Heinrich Klaasen on 56. That's the exact number of runs that Temba ultimately scored. I don't know how many balls Kane had played at that point.
Yeah, no, that's a really good question, actually. But but he's really, when you said before you saw it as 340 par, obviously I saw it as a lot higher. But the difference between the 340 and the 362 or 363, whatever they got to, was probably the fact that Kane just caned it, right? Like, because Mitchell, I mean, it was really lucky for them that Mitchell found form. a really interesting game, actually. Ngidi and Mitchell, who both looked like the two worst players coming in, suddenly both came back a little bit to their best when it mattered. No one will ever remember that from Ngidi again, but this was probably his best game in this tournament.
It's crazy, right? We were
Yeah.
slagging Ngidi off that he is the weak link, and he ends up with the best figures, 3 for 72. All three of those wickets were slow deliveries, Jarrod. He even would have gotten another wicket, but I think he was the guy who would have gotten Kane out for 56 when Klaasen dropped that catch.
Which would have been even more important, right? So I think, Mitchell on a wicket like that, once he was in, was always going to be hard to handle. I don't think they bowled very well to him, though. And then obviously Phillips, got some away at the end.
Yeah.
But the missing link is that generally, even if Kane would get more aggressive towards the end, there's a difference between more aggressive and what he did here. This is that, as I was saying before, that rare Kane that we haven't seen a lot of recent times, where he suddenly just goes absolutely ballistic. And we'd seen it a couple of times for New Zealand, but just not enough.
We saw it once recently in the Tri Series, right? But similar conditions, belter of a surface. And I mean, that's why I'm keen to see how he kind of, manages that versus India on a surface that won't be a belter. It will be a sticky one, what we expect at least.
But I think what he needs to work out now is how not to have the bad start, right? Because he's such a good strike rotator. I almost don't understand how he could ever be stuck the way that he gets, because he's going to hit a couple of boundaries.
Shots.
Yeah, he can hit the ball everywhere, and also it is so hard to keep him on strike because of the way he plays. Because he could hit almost any ball from middle stump across to third man. So you can't put a fielder, you can't really stop that position. And even if even if they bring short third up to stop him getting the single, he should be able to get a boundary in that position every couple of balls anyway. And then he can play everywhere else. And I think that's I think what he will be looking at, because if he does that, then he doesn't actually need to boom at the end. He can have the games where he doesn't boom at the end, and it doesn't matter because he hasn't dragged down anything else. He hasn't put more pressure on Ratchanravindra or Will Young or Daryl Mitchell or anything else. And he's just been getting stuck at times. But he is obviously a great batter. He is, without any question, in the greatest 50 batters that we have ever seen in cricket. Like T20 cricket, ODI cricket, not exactly his formats, but he's still so skillful and so smart that it's like he's made himself into a successful one-day player just because he's smart, right? And in T20 cricket, he keeps getting contracts despite the fact that the last couple of years he's been one of the worst T20 players in the world because people just know how good he is.
Yeah, I mean, he's got a SA20 contract. He's going to be playing the PSL this year. And over here, Varun is telling us that he scored 14 runs less than expected versus India and 8 runs more than expected versus South Africa. So yeah, I mean, look, I feel like he's going to be a key player for New Zealand in the final because he is a wonderful player of spin. And look, he can drive the ball, he can cut the ball, he can pull the ball. He's got it all. But what I loved was, and I mean, sweeps and slog sweeps and slaps, all of that stuff. But the scoops and the reverse sweep, that's where I got really interested in this knock. And I feel like Kane has a very, very major role to play forward. And him and Ravindra set up the stage. They set the platform up. And then Mitchell scores 49 of 37 and Glenn Phillips scores an unbeaten 49 of 27. So that's what, 64 deliveries, 98 runs. They've basically done a David Miller, right? Combined. Miller did it on his own. They did it as a combination. And South Africa even dropped Mitchell on 39. So they were quite scrappy in that sense. Had they caught Williamson and Mitchell, maybe they were looking at something around 320 and they could have chased that, right? Even in the last 10 overs, did you remember that little phase where I was like, oh, can they hold them back to 330? But then Glenn Phillips happened.
They didn't bowl particularly well at the end. They only needed a little bit of luck, like a fluke run out or one that was hit straight up in the air, and it could have been a very different kind of chase. I think you're right. But New Zealand used their batting exactly as they wanted to. Like, even if you say Williamson got stuck, other than the Tom Latham thing, I don't know why Tom Latham came out.
I have no idea why Tom Latham was promoted ahead of Glenn Phillips at that point. It completely baffled me, and I was hitting my head against the wall. I was like, seriously? You've got 11, 12 overs to go. You've got Glenn Phillips up your sleeve. Why?
And Bracewell.
Yeah.
if they both fail, great. Send Latham in, and he can still score in the death. He's not a bad death player by any means. But why would you send him in at that stage?
Yeah.
But their batting order, if you forget the Latham bit, kind of worked exactly as they wanted. Ratchin put pressure on South Africa. Obviously, they lost one early wicket. You're always a chance of losing one early wicket. Kane got in and maybe got stuck, but because of Ratchin's batting, it didn't matter. So it actually allowed Kane to play that he wanted to. Then once he was in, he exploded. Daryl Mitchell, for the first 10 or 15 balls, did not look like he was in any form. But because Kane was going at the other end, it allowed Daryl Mitchell to just knock the ball around. He found form. And so by the time Phillips came in, he didn't have to slog straight away because Mitchell, like, it just kept working, right? And, you know, that is my big issue with New Zealand coming in was the high scoring games. And I still think they were under par. But my big issue with them as a team was the high scoring games. And that worked absolutely perfectly the way that they needed it to get them in a position where this is one of the high scoring teams. There's only, you know, there's only India, Australia and South Africa, and who knows what the hell England do anymore. But there's only basically 3 teams who are high scoring teams, right?
Yeah.
And New Zealand is going to have to beat 2 of those teams to win this tournament. Well, they've done one. So well done to them because, you know, that was one of my big questions in this whole tournament was how they do it. And they still have holes in this side. Like, you know, the death bowling was always going to be a worry. And I know some of the steam had gone out of that game, but they're not a good death bowling team. They need to be ahead of the game, and they got ahead of the game.
Absolutely. And I mean, look, I feel like in the death overs when they were batting, New Zealand, and I felt at that point like, okay, South Africa, you could probably restrict them to 330 or 340 if you ball well. That's when Glenn Phillips comes and smashes 4 fours on the bounce versus Janssen, and then he also takes Rabada to the cleaners, right? He is a big luxury, but at times I feel like they also over-rely on Glenn Phillips and his firepower. So it's like both a positive and a negative because he's kind of left alone over there. I know Bracewell can whack it and so can Santner, but neither of those guys are Glenn Phillips. And so it kind of like, you know, as far as power hitting is concerned, he has a major role to play. What if he fails? And he couldn't pick up Varun the other day, right? So that'll concern them.
I think the issue with Glenn Phillips, other than, he might not be able to pick up the spinners, which is fair. But I think the issue with Glenn Phillips is quite often when he comes in, they've been going slow for a long period of time.
Yeah.
And so he tries to go too quickly, too early. And Glenn Maxwell did that against India, right? Glenn Maxwell and Glenn Phillips don't just share a name. They both feel the pressure of slow scoring. You see it on their faces sometimes. And we've all seen Glenn Maxwell do this. You can go back to Shahid Afridi, a slightly different kind of player, but he was a very similar one. Sometimes with Shahid Afridi, be like, just get to 5 off 5. Just get to none off 5. Because once you're set, you could probably hit multiple sixes. And these guys, sometimes they're just so eager because they're like, oh, you know, this guy, look, his strike rate was only 70. I've got to make up for it. And as an attacking batter, I kind of get it. Like, I've probably done that at times as well. When Phillips comes in and someone else is going, or the score is already really good, he's a completely different player, right? Then he's a cherry on top, as you said before. When they're using him as the single attacking player, if Rachin Ravindra doesn't score any runs, that's a bit of a problem. When they're using him as the last 15 overs and it's time for you to go in, get your eye in for a minute, and then just see how many you can get us, that's exactly what you want Glenn Phillips to do.
Yeah, and here's to hoping that, you know, if he is to kind of fulfill his role, New Zealand give him some sort of help up top, and he's not left with all of the heavy lifting when it comes to power hitting. But I mean, South Africa's bowling didn't help. Like we said, that Ngidi was the best bowler with 3 for 72. That kind of paints a picture on its own. Maharaj wicketless, and Kane and Rachin completely, like, you know, took him on, and that was great to watch. Also,
great work from
Rabada
Kane too as well. Yeah, because he doesn't always go after the spinners these days.
Yeah, no, he was using his feet, and he went big downtown. I think over mid wicket once, and then he was also slog sweeping him. But then, you know, Rabada was at first change, never understood that, took 2 wickets but wasn't looking as threatening as he usually does. It was a terrible day for Marco Jansen. None for 79, Phillips completely butchered him, and then too many balls either short pitched, you know, or on the leg side. That was kind of like his entire day, and you expected Janssen to at least do better with the new ball because that was also a key phase, and Janssen had been doing well. So I feel like this was probably one of the worst South African bowling performances that I can think of in recent times.
Yeah, and they're being a good bowling side, and the one question mark we had was answered, and the rest of them fell apart. So Look,
Yeah.
they were out bowled, they were outfielded, and they were out batted. Let's be honest. Like they're just
Yeah.
in every part, and they're a good side. That I still think pound for pound they're a better side than New Zealand, but New Zealand outthought them, out batted them, out bowled, outfielded. On every single metric. So those South African bowlers should be disappointed today.
They were the two best fielding sides of the tournament, but then South Africa didn't, like, they dropped 2 catches in this game. New Zealand's catch percentage or success rate, right, is 96% in this tournament, which is freakish. And that's been one of their, major major areas which they have done really well in, which has allowed them to make the final. Now, I know, and we all know that India are heavy favorites over here in the final, right? And New Zealand aren't particularly set up to beat India in Dubai, because if you look at Santner, Bracewell, Phillips, Ravindra, they are nowhere near the levels of Varun, Kuldeep, Akshar and Jadeja. But then, Jarrod, I could also say that this is a knockout game. New Zealand are India's bogey team, and they weren't set up to defeat India or sweep them 3-0 in a test series in their own backyard either. And they managed to do that. So where are we over here?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't looked at the odds, but I would assume India are massive favourites and probably deservedly so. This isn't a perfect Indian side.
Yes.
And
New Zealand are they're literally the only team which have also played in Dubai first in this tournament. Like they've had that experience of playing in Dubai. No one else has that advantage either.
Yeah, and so without Bumrah, you just take away a big thing from India, which is the backup plan of, it's all gone to shit, but we have Bumrah. So there's always a chance. But India should start heavy favourites and they should win. But South Africa were favourites and they lost. New Zealand is probably put as much pressure on India. I don't know what the odds were, but I would have thought that from a bookie's perspective, the only time that India were massively behind in a game in this tournament would have been when Matt Henry went nuts, right?
Yeah, and Matt Henry was clutching his shoulder. So will he be fit? I think he will be. That's going to be important because he took 5 for 42 versus India in the group game. They need him in the first 10 overs. I
don't think they can beat India if Matt Henry doesn't take... Well, it doesn't have to be Matt Henry. It could be Kyle Jameson, who also bowled well in the last game. But I think they have to just take early wickets because then I think if they can do that, it's closer to a 50-50 game from then on in. If they don't do that, I just don't think they can squeeze them and cause issues the way that they have. But they're a smart team. They might come up with a new tactic, but I just don't see it.
Yeah, honestly, I also feel like India could play their B game and win this final, right? And they haven't played their best cricket in this tournament either. We know that India is a better team than this, right? But New Zealand, look, I feel like, I don't even know. Like, my mind says they should bat first and probably aim for 280, 290 at the very least. But then there's the UAE surface, which we don't really know what way it'll play. It might just be a good toss to lose, which India, who have gone on like a 14-run or 14-match toss losing streak, and Rohit has lost 11 of those, this might be that toss that he wouldn't mind losing, right? Because he had no idea what to do in the semi. He admitted to that.
Yeah, also, which wicket they use is going to be really interesting because we were told there were 2 wickets, then suddenly there was 3 pitches being used. So working out which exact wicket that they're eventually going to go with and hoping that they don't change their mind, which seems like they might have earlier, will play a part as well.
You think both teams will go unchanged? Do you see some room for Devon Conway perhaps? Or would you bring in I think India would only bring in a spare seamer ahead of Kuldeep potentially if the surface is such, which I don't see happening.
Who do you bring Conway in for?
Will Young is the only guy I can think of, right?
It probably just depends on what you think Will Young.
He's more experienced. He's played the IPL. He's seen more of these Indian bowlers.
That's what I mean.
Will Young was the player of the series in that test series.
Yeah, it just probably depends on how you think Will Young's going to handle the spinners. I'm not sure I'd make a change.
He looked completely at sea versus Varun, but then so did a lot of other batters, right? So that will be a big.
You can't drop them all, mate.
Yeah, and if they're probably looking at a lot of these video footages of Varun right now as we record this, because I mean he was the one who completely blew them away. 5 for 42 for him in the previous group game as well. So that's going to be a key battle. Also, I feel like if New Zealand have to win this, they will have to bring their A game, which they also kind of did in the field in that group game. So that makes this even worse for them. They have to continue to field brilliantly, can't give India any chances, and then, of course, not give India any wickets in the middle overs. You said something the other day about potentially promoting Tom Latham to number 4. You think they should do that?
That was just because that wicket was spinning.
Yeah. But this one might as well.
Yeah, so if it's spinning violently, I don't think you want Daryl Mitchell going in and poking around at the ball in those early middle overs when it's spinning quickly. A little bit different later on if it starts to, the ball gets a little bit more soft and tired and everything else. But when it's spinning quickly, if they're in that position, I would promote Latham. I just think I don't understand why New Zealand's so dogmatic with their batting lineup. They've got specific skilled players who can move around, and then they don't use them that way. So
that is weird.
It's not about promoting Tom Latham. It's about using the right players in the right situations.
True, I know. I mean, we'd probably have to speak to Gary Stead about that. But anyway, I think that's enough of a preview for the final. Let's do a quick Super Chat speed round because I know we're already kind of over time and I have a different podcast to go to as well. Andy says, is Shahid Afridi an all-time bowler in T20s or ODI? I think T20s you can make a case. Rashid Khan is like the Pro Max version of Shahid Afridi. And in ODIs, he had this 5-year spell, 09 to like 13, 14, where he was really good. So yeah, in those phases, I suppose.
Yeah, I think he's probably, I don't know, in the top 20 spinners of all time, isn't he? I would have thought.
Yeah.
Certainly, I would have thought in both of those formats.
Yeah, especially in that period. And T20s were like his favorite format. Soham Bhattacharya asks, Behram, thoughts on Cena's heel turn? I don't watch wrestling, but my co-host Saad does. So he informed me that John Cena has turned his heel. The only John Cena I'm worried about is Glenn Phillips. He's my guy, and he can turn his heels to grab onto those one-handed screamers, right, at backward point. So
is turned his heel the correct phrase? Is that what it means?
Turning your heel in wrestling means you go evil.
No, but a heel turn means you go evil. But is it literally? I don't understand what the heel has to do. Like I don't understand why you turn your heel.
I don't know what the etymology is, but sure, great for wrestling. Cena's always been the good guy, right? He's the bad guy now. Wonderful. Bluey, the dog. He asks, or she asks, if you were doing top T20 batters of all time, would IPL performances take precedence over internationals? What would be your top 4 in that format? Look, we probably need to do a proper podcast on this, right? We can't just answer this on the fly.
Yeah. The first part of the question is I'm very uninterested in international T20 cricket because it's played so infrequently and everything else. So I generally look at all T20 data when I'm looking at a player. So internationals and domestic stuff.
Yeah. All right. I think I'll agree with that as well. Next super chat is from Trishan Naidu. He says, if AB de Villiers played for India and Virat and Sachin played for South Africa, AB de Villiers would have more than 1 World Cup and Sachin and Virat 0 as well. I mean, that's just pure conjecture. We don't know.
There are great athletes who get stuck in the wrong situation. Kevin Garnett probably deserved to win 3 or 4 titles in the NBA, but played for Minnesota too long, right?
What was that guy's name? Robert Horry? The guy with like 7 rings or something?
and nowhere near the player that, with all due respect to Brad Hogg, right? Like, he has more World Cup victories than Shane Warne does, doesn't he? So,
yeah.
When you play and everything else is a part of it, it would completely change the teams. So Sachin actually would be if Sachin played the aggressive opening role for South Africa, maybe that would hide some of their problems. And maybe Virat also do you know what I mean? Those guys playing there. But there's also times when India needed an AB de Villiers. Do you know what I mean? And they could have won more titles with that. So who knows?
Yeah. Samit Khan, this is the guy who was a Spurs, Clippers, and South African fan, says he grew up in a family of Arsenal supporters, studied in LA, and stayed near the Staples Center. And he got into cricket during the '99 World Cup. I mean, look, you could have been an Australia fan in the '99 World Cup as well. And sure, I get your LA sentiment. And I also kind of understand that, if everyone is supporting Arsenal in the family, you're like, you know what, screw that. I'm going to go for another different London club. The reason why I became a Chelsea fan, Samit, was because United and Arsenal were the 2 best teams at that point. My first year of watching Premier League football was the Invincibles year. And the season after that, I was like, you know what, screw the red teams. I'm going to pick the blue one. And it kind of worked out for me. So, yeah, I can understand that. Keshav Huria says, question. Rob Key said England would be stupid not to consider Stokes as a white ball captain. Okay, oh, all right. I didn't know that. And B, he says, we don't help ourselves speaking a lot of rubbish in the media. Whoa. I mean, I have to process this. I'm going to process this while you answer it, Jarrod.
Stokes. I just don't know if Stokes' body can handle it. So
Yeah.
he's right, but I don't know how that helps. B, I mean, it's good that someone in that system is finally saying we're talking shit because it's funny. I don't follow ABC Grandstand on Instagram, but a lot of their Instagram seem to come up into my feed, and SEN as well. And the amount of times it's just a comment by an English player in cricket, and then some random Australian slagging them off. It's like they just give. It's like it's a whole, and social media is the exact same, right? They're just giving everyone a chance to make fun of them all the times because what they say is nonsensical and stupid, right?
Yeah.
And as we've said before, they are talking, the way they are talking is for the dressing room, right?
Yep.
Which is fine.
It's
I understand
dogmatic.
that. Yeah,
It's
but if
dogmatic
you
when you
say
talk
it
to the media like
publicly-
that.
Yeah, but when you say it to the public, they're going to make fun of you. Like you have to.
Yeah.
Who was it? Josh Butler said, "Oh, we certainly played well enough to win in that game." It's like great. Like he's right. If I was the analyst in that room, I'd probably be like, "Yeah, Dew came at the wrong time. You got ahead of the game, or whatever." If you say that publicly, you look like an idiot. What you say is, "We were in that game. The Dew came. We probably now thinking back, maybe we should have got slightly ahead, or whatever else. We played well, but they played better." They never say that, right? They never just phrase it correctly. Anyway.
Yep. They always just, kind of glorify themselves that we're doing cricket a huge favor and entertaining, but they're not winning for a while now. And I feel Ben Duckett might need to or someone's going to have a word with Ben Duckett after that statement from Rob Key. Anyway, Junk Rig Sailor from New Zealand is asking. So it's New Zealand versus Team Dubai in the final. No, Junk, it's New Zealand versus India in the Dubai Trophy. How about that one? Okay, Laughing at Nothing is asking. Varun and Bumrah for India in the T20 World Cup sounds insane. It actually does, man. I mean, that is the stuff of nightmares.
They're the two best white ball bowlers in the world. And India doesn't even have one of them at the moment, and they're still doing pretty well.
Yeah. Bluey once again says if you were doing top 10. Oh, we did this already. Varun,
Came up.
this one's done.
Come on, Varun.
Yes, yeah.
Oh, wait, sorry. There we go.
Okay, so this is the final one of the day, Super Chat. It's from Triple Stroke. He says, if Rachin played in India, would he get into the 11? Probably not. Jaiswal can't get into the 11.
It would be harder for him to get in the top 3, wouldn't it? But when you say that, would he have already been in ahead of Shubman Gill? Does that make sense? So there's
Also,
another way
maybe
of looking at it. Like he might not. It'd be hard for him to force his way into the top 3 as it currently stands. But
Yeah.
a couple of years ago, Shubman Gill wasn't Shubman Gill. So at that stage, if they'd picked Rachin Ravindra, then there's always that opportunity as well.
Also, if they were looking for a Kohli replacement at number 4 in Test cricket, Rachin bats at that number in that format. So maybe over there.
And also, if because of his bowling, because of his fielding, he might be seen as someone that you would pick over Shubman Gill anyway. Like not now, but again, when they were young and they're both coming through. So yeah, right at the moment, probably not because they have 3 of the greatest ODI players of all time. But Rachin's a different player than that. But also, that's you could make that comment with, there were probably times when. Actually, I was going to say probably times when Martin Crowe wouldn't have gotten the Australian team, but he probably would have in his era. But there are probably times when very good players around the world, I mean, Grant Elliott wouldn't have got in the South African team, right?
Yeah.
He seemed to do okay. Neil Wagner wouldn't have got in the South African team. He seemed to do okay.
True. Devon Conway, right? Never got into the South African domestic team. And he is played international cricket for New Zealand. But anyway, just to kind of wrap this up real quick, Jarrod, prediction time. Is it India?
Yeah, I mean, I think you'd be silly to pick New Zealand unless you want the good odds. But it's not. It's not like it's not 100% or anything. It's not like a 95% chance. But India's the better team. There's a possibility that if it's a weird slow wicket, 270 to 280, perhaps the wicket that Australia played on would have been the ideal one for New Zealand to play on, actually. Yeah. Because it didn't spin all that much, but it wasn't a wicket where the ball was flowing off the bat. So perhaps if you get a wicket like that, that brings New Zealand back into the game a little bit. But if it's a wicket that spins sideways, India just should win that game. And if it's a really high-scoring game, I would assume India will win that game.
A lot of things need to go well for New Zealand over here. Like, I feel like maybe batting first works out if they post 280, 290, and then, don't lose any wickets in the middle overs, have some good new ball bowling, and Santner turns up again. Like, the list keeps going on and on and on, which is why I'm also going with India. But hey, it's a knockout game. Anything can happen on a given day. So,
and I would say, just one last thing is the toss in Dubai.
Yes.
Can sometimes just play a bigger part than we thought. Like, I think Australia batting first the other day kept them in that game, right? Like, sometimes if the toss goes your way, especially on a wicket like that, it can help.
Yeah. So let's see what happens on Sunday. And the next time you see us on a live will be Monday because Jarrod is traveling Sunday. So it's not like the post-final review will not happen on Sunday, just a heads up, but you'll get better internet. So I don't think you guys should complain. And that's it for this one. May the best team win. And lots of, thanks to all of the people in the comments for interacting with us and for your generous super chats as well. Just a quick reminder, you can go to goodareas.co and bookmark that webpage, which can prove to be your one-stop shop for all the work that we do as part of this team, whether it be written content, videos, or podcasts. So yeah, have a good couple of days. Enjoy the final, and we'll see you soon enough. That's all for now, guys. Goodbye.
As an international cricket journalist for 10 years, I tell you what, I have got a collection of international SIM cards that I will never truly understand. Now I find there is a company called Sally who gives you an eSIM, and it makes it all so much easier. So if you're planning on making any trips, download your Sally eSIM app, and you can also get a 15% discount if you say good areas, all one word, at checkout. Travel like a pro with your Sally eSIM today.